My 3D printer showed up this afternoon.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, yeah. So my next airplane's going to be made completely out of 3D printed parts and welded. Welcome back. This is, what's the name of this podcast again? Oh, yeah. We Are Not Experts. It's an airplane building podcast. I'm Chris.
I'm Tim.
And we are not experts. Today is Sunday, the 2nd of February, 2025. It's about 5 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time, 1700 if you live really anywhere other than North America. If you're wondering what the PM thing means. Tim, how the hell are you?
I'm a little nauseous, but otherwise good.
You're a little nauseous.
A little bit.
Yeah, I told you a minute ago when you said that the first time, like, hold on to that feeling because that's something that I want to talk about today. Where the hell are you?
I'm still in Lancaster, California. It's actually sunny now. It's beautiful out there. It's like 70 degrees sunny.
Oh, well, I was going to tell you that you're missing out on the weather here at home, but apparently we are step for step, Lancaster versus my area / your home area today. It's absolutely spectacular weather today. Speaking of spectacular weather and the things that people do in spectacular weather, why are you feeling nauseous?
I just got back in from doing a spin endorsement training in a decathlon.
Wow. Wow. Now,
That was fun.
fun, sure. Have you ever, I mean, you spent a lot of time in airplanes, but most of it in big, super stable C5s.
Yep.
Have you ever experienced anything like this nausea or air sickness or whatever you're experiencing right now?
No, this is the first time I've intentionally spun a plane and recovered it. So
Yeah. But in any of your other like little airplane flying, have you ever gotten a little in your stomach?
no, not really. Even flying the C5, doing all the crazy flight test stuff,
Yeah.
never really ever got nauseous.
Huh. The reason I'm curious and I'm asking about that is because I've never experienced any kind of air sickness, motion sickness, or anything like that. So I thought, oh, I mean, if I get into doing weirder stuff, I think it'll be the same. In my very limited experience, I would say the greatest potential to experience that would be either um, unusual attitude recovery, like when you go do your biannual flight review, or what you were
Yep.
doing recently. That's a good chance for it to happen. And then also just sort of instrument training in general, doing long, like your long cross country where you're under
Oh,
the
on the
hood for
hood.
3 hours and that sort of thing. I've never experienced it. So now I'm kind of curious. You have not experienced it previously. I'm curious if when I do spin training or start training in aerobatics, if I'm going to feel a little
Well,
differently.
I think I was fine until it was time for him to act as the student and me to catch what he was doing wrong and instruct. So that was the point where I was no longer in control of the aircraft. That was a different sensation because when I was spinning it, I was super focused on what I was doing, the recovery procedures, I was counting the turns. But when I was sitting back just watching what he was doing, that's what kind of got me. And from that point on, I was a little bit nauseous. I didn't puke. I don't want anybody to think I puked out there. I held it together.
So you didn't have lunch, huh?
No, I did not have lunch. Um, it was 1.3 hours total. Plus, we did about 45 minutes of ground leading up to it. And I ended up getting my actual endorsement to teach spin training later on if I ever get my instructor rating.
Very cool. What field did you fly out of?
Fox Field in
Have you ever flown out of Fox
Lancaster,
Field before?
California. I have not. It was actually really beautiful.
Yeah,
Nice and open, really nice.
a big wide runway. That was where I would often fly to when I was doing my finishing up my private in Van Nuys. And at the time, I worked for UPS, and our UPS hub, like my building, was literally right across the street from Hollywood Aviators, which is where I was doing my training.
Okay,
And so
so
I
you're
would
familiar.
go, yeah, I would go in. Um, I would go in in the morning, like 6:30 for a flight lesson in like my brown shorts and the whole thing. And I would go up there.
Special delivery.
Exactly. So yeah, hop in the plane and then fly out to Fox Field and do, a bunch of pattern work, whatever, and then fly back in. And I always would remark that when, LA traffic, when we would depart Van Nuys, you're flying north over the 405, and then you head out to Palmdale, which is 50, 60 miles away, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Spend an hour or so out there and then come back in. And I would swear to my flight instructor that there was a red car that was at one exit when we left, and when we came back, it was still at the same exit. It hadn't moved in an hour and a half. Yeah, so I
Sounds about
love
right.
Fox Field. That was what did we do that I thought was so fun because it was flying in ground effect, because that's such a big runway. So we'd go up there and he would have me use that as a good opportunity. You'd have a long time to fly in ground effect to see what it feels like and to accelerate through it and everything. So
I
Fox
got to
Field for that.
experience some of that on landing.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know if it's still there. I'm sure it probably is, but there's a diner there that you can park the plane next to. And so that was one of the very first things that I did after I got my ticket, was take my dad and
$100
my
hamburger.
and my daughter and my nephew, and flew up there for breakfast. And
Very
it
cool.
was kind of funny. It was end of summer, really, really hot, in a 172 with two adults in front and two kids in the back. And to get back after breakfast, I think that I had to like spiral upward for like 20 minutes
Oh, just to
to
get out
gain
of
enough
there.
altitude to get over the mountains to get back to Van Nuys.
Well, this was a lot of firsts for me. This is the first fuel injected airplane engine I've flown behind. First constant speed prop. So I got a lot of that. That was interesting, dealing with the power versus the RPM, and yeah.
Yeah, so we talked about that. You and I talked about that before, um, and you were, I think, kind of on the fence about whether or not you're going to do a constant speed prop on your airplane because you've never flown with one before.
Yeah, and I'm still kind of on the fence, but one of the most impressive things to me was like the air brake feature when you throttle back on that thing. Like when I would slow down to get ready for the stall and the spin entry, as soon as you throttle back, it's like hitting the brakes. I was getting pushed forward in the straps.
Yeah, which, I mean, the airplane that you're building is super slippery.
Yep.
Having the ability to put on the brakes like that is probably going to be beneficial. I've only flown a few times with the constant speed prop, and I think part of it is getting reps with it. Um, like you were flying with an instructor today, so he's telling you, if you're adjusting the prop first or the throttle next, or what the order of operations is. But
Yep.
when I did my little flight from Berlin up to Copenhagen and back, um, I was like, I had the manual on my lap to make sure that I was doing it right.
Yeah, it was confusing. I still haven't decided. I still like the idea of the simplicity of a fixed pitch prop in the RV. Plus, it's lighter on the nose.
All right, I'm going to argue with you on that, because if you were attracted to simplicity, you wouldn't be building an airplane. You would be committed
True statement.
to just buying into a partnership on a 172 or something like that.
Very, very true. But it's one more thing to maintain and break and get overhauled.
Speaking of one more thing to break, I was out in the shop today, and you text me and said, I'm watching Ryan's latest video right now. Ouch. And I didn't know what the ouch was about. And so
Oh,
I came in and I managed to find enough time to watch that video before we started recording. It When you said ouch, because of his recent video talking about how expensive his panel was, I was like, wait, is there more? Is there some other super expensive thing he hasn't talked about yet?
no, this was a different ouch.
Oh boy.
See, and I haven't drilled that for that same reason that he just did, because I was terrified of that exact thing happening.
Well, that's interesting now, because you said ouch. I assumed I knew what you were talking about after watching his video, but we're thinking about two different things.
Which part are you talking about?
Well, I'm talking about dropping the left elbow,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
big boo boo, and
That too.
that's a kind of mess that I would make. Although my messes, to be honest, I haven't made messes by dropping my stuff on the ground. I make it right there on the bench with a tool, typically.
Well, you got to remember, I dropped a potato gun on my horizontal stab and made a dent. So
No. So yeah, Ryan's that ouch, because the other boo boo drilling that hole and then the fix that he had to make with it, it the interesting thing to me about that whole thing, and then I guess for our several listeners around the world. Oh, by the way, this is episode 5 of what I'm sure will be more than 5 episodes of We Are Experts and
that's right.
Building Podcast. Um, Ryan Flies, to anybody who doesn't know what we're talking about, Ryan Flies is a guy in the Portland area named Ryan, obviously, cleverly, who's building an RV7, and he's pretty far along. And in his video today, he was attaching the tail control surfaces to his now built fuselage, and two things happened. One was that when he was doing it, and it's not on camera, kind of mixed feelings about whether or not I actually would want to witness that happening. But he apparently, his left elevator fell off the table and got a pretty nice deformation on the corner of that elevator. Then it's those are the control horns for the elevators, right? That he was
Yep.
drilling through. Yeah. So I think there's a challenging bit of drilling that has to happen using a drill guide that you make. And when he did it, it turned out poorly, and he had an already assembled elevator that now had a hole that needed to be fixed, and went a long way to say there. What ended up happening is that on um, one of those horns, which is a steel powder coated steel piece, the hole was too close to the edge. It's not usable. And my first reaction to that, if it was me in that situation, because 99.98% of everything that we do on this airplane is with aluminum, I would have just been, well, I guess I have to remake this whole thing now. Um, but it's not, it's steel. And
Yeah, you can fill it.
yeah, you can fill it, which is not something that ever would have occurred to me. Um, so then that didn't seem like such a big deal to me. That was a fairly simple fix.
Yeah, it's just I'm still scared of drilling that hole.
Yeah, yeah. Well, um, because that damage on the elevator is more worrisome to me. I don't think that it will necessarily cause any structural problems in the attempt to reshape it and repair it. But oh boy, that just made my stomach turn a little bit when I saw that.
Yeah, yeah, that was a rough one. It's nice to know that no matter how far along you get, you're still capable of making simple mistakes. We have so much more to look forward to.
I know, man. I've piled up so many mistakes. Um, so the last time we spoke was when I had finished up removing that the front spar to the left flap that has now become my life, the left flap. And I didn't get anything done up until yesterday. I didn't get anything done in the shop the whole week. I was still working like a real life person. Um, when I went into the shop yesterday, the plan was to get the piano hinge removed from that spar, because even though I drilled out those rivets, and I say that with air quotes because really I just removed the heads of those rivets so that the spar could be freed from the skin. They're not drilled all the way through, so the tails of those rivets are still holding the piano hinge to the flange of the spar. And what I discovered very quickly yesterday is there's those aluminum piano hinges are super, super soft, and there's no way of cleanly removing them. And it's not even worth attempting, to be honest. Like even if I could get on a good streak and very carefully and cleanly drill all the way through, let's say 7 or 8 in a row, there's just no chance that I'm going to get through 56 of them perfectly. I'm going
No.
to mess it up, and I would have wasted an hour and a half on something that ultimately I'm going to have to reorder. And so,
Plus, that thing's structural. That's what attaches the flap to the airplane.
yeah, it's so you can't afford to. Oh, well, it's only 2 or 3 bad holes. You
Yeah.
can't. So, and that made another decision easy for me too, because as we mentioned last week, I do have a spare spar because of the laser cut parts debacle that we all lived through for many, many months. And I did it. I did inspect it, and it's fine. It doesn't have any of those crazy keyhole kind of holes. Totally serviceable. But since I do have to reorder that piano hinge, which is the same length as that spar, I might as well just go ahead and order a new spar that is definitely not laser cut, because
Same size. So,
shipped in it, yeah, it's not the shipping at that point, which is always with these long pieces. That's the gotcha. Doesn't matter. I'm already shipping a long piece, so I need to do that. So
so I was curious about that shipping part. Have you checked with Vans to see do they have that hinge available?
no, no, I haven't called them. So I need.
Okay, because I have an update on my hinge. I actually, so everybody that watched the videos knows I ordered hinge material from Aircraft Spruce so I can attach my wingtips. I got some number 4 and number 3, P4 and P3 size hinges. And I think it's the P3s, which is what these are, that were on back order. Yes.
The 4 is the wider one that you're using.
Yep. So I reached out to Aircraft Spruce to find out what was going on before I left on this trip. And they told me that it was a manufacturing delay. They were waiting for them to actually produce more. And then as soon as they got them, they would ship them. They expected it to be about a 21-day backlog. Well, they just emailed me the other day saying they have no update. They have no idea how long it's going to be now. They still have no stock and nothing from the manufacturer. So I'm wondering if that affects everybody or if it was just what Aircraft Spruce was getting.
I suspect that it affects everybody. Like, I mean, um, if you look at Vans, because I think that when you were looking for it, I checked Vans website and it says call to order, which doesn't
Hmm.
sound like
It doesn't sound promising, does it?
it. Yeah, call to order means like, well, let me have somebody go back in the back and look. But in the meantime, maybe I can sell you something else since you're on the phone. Yeah, so I think that there's going to be a bit of delay, and then the other delay that I wasn't expecting but I'm now experiencing is those Cherry Max rivets that I bought for
Oh, that's right.
yeah, for the business I have to do with the aileron brackets and stuff like that. Those are also back ordered. Um, it's not like I don't have a million other things to do. Um,
There's always something to do.
I've got plenty. So yeah, that's sort of the update on the stuff that I was dealing with the previous week. What have you been able to do, if anything, this week while you're out there on the road?
I worked on a panel design and I've kind of got it in my head. I've got some chicken scratch written down. I can't do anything with it until I get a fuselage kit and I get the actual panel parts to play with. But for those that don't know, what I'm referring to is the instrument panel that's in an RV8. It's in 3 pieces. You have 2 little side pieces that are permanently installed on the plane, and then there's a center removable piece. The idea being that you can remove that whole piece and you get access to the avionics behind it and whatever if you got to work on it. And the reason it's as narrow as it is because it has to clear the window brow and a few other things that are in there. If it was a full size panel, you wouldn't be able to pull it out in one piece. Um, but playing around with Hanger Panel Builder, it's a great app online, lets you go place avionics and play around with how your panel is going to be set up. It's become very obvious that it's kind of an outdated design on the RV8 because it was designed back when it was all steam gauges and you can put anything anywhere. Well, now if you get big size glass panels, you don't necessarily have room to have that panel centered and still have room for a radio stack or something on the side. The compromise is you off center the panel, which would drive me absolutely nuts. And then you put your avionics on the side of that, or your radio stack, or you go with smaller stuff. So what I'm looking at trying to do, and I don't know how feasible it would be, is keep the same three-piece design, but I want to make the side pieces bigger, make the centerpiece a little bit narrower, and this way I can put a radio stack on one of the side pieces without having to overlap, and then have the center completely free for the big glass panel and like one thing above it.
Um, the three-piece thing.
It's like what Aerosport does for the RV7s and 9s, but for an RV8. And all three panels are still going to be removable. So it'll have a frame, and then all three will be removable, and I can still get to everything behind it.
Does it? I haven't looked at it in the plans. Is it the three pieces? So there are vertical members that support the separation between the three pieces that frame them.
The middle piece just bolts along the top brow that's attached to the airplane, and then the sides of the middle piece go through nut plates that are in the two side pieces. So it just overlaps the two side pieces and
So it
bolts to
doesn't
it.
have to be. So it's done for convenience, but it doesn't have to. There's not a structural reason why it's separated into three
No.
pieces. So if you did something, I'm trying to think, RV8 hanger guy. I don't know that he did a three-piece panel, but he did a he's got a ton of access through his bag compartment.
Oh yeah, the modification where you make a door in the baggage compartment. Yep, I was going to do that one too. But I figure between that and what I'm planning, I should have complete access without having to stand on my head to get in there.
Yeah, and that may be where my confusion was about that three-piece business. And then because you talked about that last week, and then on Monday I went out to the airport for airplanes and coffee like I do every Monday. And one of the guys is designing a panel for oh no, he's not designing a panel. It's RV8 that he's going up to New York to buy from a guy, really nice one. And I'm looking at the panel and I'm like, that's one piece and it's got big ass Garmin stuff in there. But I also know that with that panel and for panels like Joe has two of the large G3X touches in his RV8. It's because in that instance and others, it's using remote mounted radios that allows
Right.
you to do that.
Yep. And I'm going to have some not remote mounted stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to have, I'm just going to have a walkie talkie like swinging from some paracord hanging above my head.
And that would be the cheap, easy way to go at this point.
It's all I got, man. That's the way this is going right now.
Speaking of other developments of what has happened this week, I spent every day from Friday when I did the buy it now on that auction.
Oh, yeah.
Until this last Friday, attempting to get a hold of the seller. I reached out through eBay, told them I had no contact. They escalated it. They sent me a message saying he received my message. I did find the same guy selling the same engine on Barnstormers. There's no phone numbers listed, but I sent him a message on there like, hey, I just won this auction for this on eBay, trying to get a hold of you. Please reach out. Day later, that ad went away on Barnstormers, but he never reached out to me. Never heard from him. By Friday, this last Friday, eBay went ahead and refunded me my money. So I have no engine. There will be no helicopter motor at the front of this plane right now.
All right. So you've got exactly as many engines as I do.
I do. So keep looking. Something will pop up.
Yeah. At least you didn't lose your money, and at least you don't have to at this point figure out how to make a helicopter engine work for your airplane.
Yeah. So.
Oh man. Well, that is a bummer, really, because that was Um, once you know that you won the thing, then your mind, the gears start turning, and you start thinking about all the things that you're going to do.
Oh yeah, I had it all in works. I was looking at parts I was going to need and things that needed to be done, and I had documents downloaded for the overhaul manuals and all out the window.
Yeah. Well,
Oh well. Oh well.
yeah, it'll come along. Um, let's see, a little update on my build other than I just, said the parts that I was going to order. So when I did get out in the garage yesterday to do some work, um, I did the bracket that we talked about before, the forward facing bracket that's made out of that piece of angle. I remade that. And you know what? There's something I wanted to say about that about that today after I watched Ryan's video. Ryan was he was working on the armrest things, right? And
Yep.
he said, I gotta use a rivet fan here. And I have a rivet fan, and he did it, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure I've never used it that way before. And it's embarrassing to say this because um, you might know. I mean, you might have the same experience, but when you mark a hole to drill it and you've got it really precisely measured with a little X, and you're marking it with a fine line Sharpie that's maybe a 32nd of an inch wide tip and everything like that, that nice little X, and then you take your mechanical punch and you, as close as you can, punch the middle of that X, and you start drilling, and still that freaking thing is not perfectly.
Oh, you're talking about him using it as a drill guide.
I've never done that.
I saw that and I was like, that's brilliant.
I'm like, I'm an idiot, man, because
I don't have a rivet fan, but I need one.
I have a rivet fan. They're great. And here's how I've always used it. I fan it out, and then I use the Sharpie to make little circles where the holes are supposed to be. And then I make bad holes instead of just
Yep.
do the first hole, do the last hole, put a cleco in each one, and that thing is locked in place. And even if you don't use it that often, so um, yeah, you will over time widen out those holes a little bit using it as a guide. Get another rivet fan. Big deal. I mean, I just looked at that and the reason I said that was because yesterday I'm I spent forever measuring out just the 5 holes for that bracket because I wanted it to come out better than the first one that I did. And it doesn't really, I mean, how much room there is on the face of that bracket. It's not like being off by a little bit. It'll make your eyes hurt when you look at it, but it's not going to hurt the airplane. It just, it's kind of like when you see a picture that is not perfectly level and it just grabs your attention. And I thought, man, I could have done that with a rivet fan. I'm like, quick work. He also did something else that I really like too, and I've done it. It's been so long ago. I think when I was working on the empennage, but just drilling the material and clecoing it to your wooden workbench.
Hmm.
You're clecoing the material, clecoing it to your bench. It stays perfectly in place. Now you have something backing behind the thing as you're drilling it, and you can drill all the holes out. But I was like, man, what a wasted opportunity. I've had that rivet fan sitting there and haven't used it really for making things so much faster and simpler. But yeah, I did that bracket, and then I turned my attention to the aileron push rods, the short ones that go from the bell crank to the aileron itself, and um, that was I. I know that it doesn't mean anything, but when I see a call out for a, in this case, a measurement of 23 and 13/16 of an inch,
Oh
suddenly
yeah.
to me, this is like, that might as well be like a machine shop level, like, precision, because it's so weird instead of being like 7/8 or something like that. It's such a, and it's not like whenever you get something that says this is supposed to be an inch and a quarter, it doesn't mean that that inch and a quarter is supposed to be any less precise. It just happens to be a quarter, but that always throws me.
That odd number makes it that much more precise. Well, remember, this thing is threaded at both ends, so you can make adjustments on the overall length.
I know that. I know that. And so for that reason, I'm like, why didn't you just make it a 16th longer or a 30-second shorter or whatever?
Yeah,
Anyways, I'll tell you what, the ones I did were dang precise because I measured the crap out of them over and over. And that's the other part of it too. It's supposed to be a super precise measurement, but it's a measurement that you're making with a tape measure.
yeah.
And yeah, I don't think that they fly things to Mars with stuff that was measured on tape measure.
I thought that when I saw Ryan measuring to make his tail straight, and he had the tape measure going from one corner to the other, and it's sagging and it's twisted. I'm like, how accurate is that? It's yeah, it's close enough.
But here's what I always say: that thing is pre-punched. It's pre-punched.
Yep. Well, not that part.
Certainly, there are opportunities for me to get things a little bit wonky and have an accumulation of parts that are off, but certainly not as bad as if I had done it completely from scratch.
Yeah, agreed.
And yeah, I might have a heavy wing, something like that, but I think it's still going to fly.
So speaking of the precise measurement of those push tubes, I cut mine differently than you cut yours, and I don't think I actually got it on video. I thought about using the bandsaw, but the same reason you had an issue, my bandsaw doesn't really have enough ass to cut through that steel, at least not precisely.
Yeah.
And then it dawned on me, I have the pipe cutter.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So I made the mark and I used the pipe cutter and made a nice, clean, straight cut.
So that never occurred to me, and probably because I did get that new cutoff tool and I wanted to use it. But I was surprised. I mentioned it in the video. I was surprised at how little extra material there is.
Yeah, it's like very, very wee.
Oh gosh, I don't even know if it's a half an inch when you separate it. Even when you're separating it, you can't be sloppy about it.
No, I did the same thing you did. I cut the first one and then I measured the second one and I'm looking at how little's left over and I'm like, I had to have screwed this up.
So I didn't do
Something's got to be
that.
wrong.
I measured. I measured from both ends. I was just going to make the measurement from both ends. So then I do 23 and 3/16 and I make a mark, and then I go the other end. I go 23 and 3/16 and I make a
Oh, and
mark,
you had the little bit in the middle.
and I'm like, this can't be right. These things are right. They're so close to each other. I don't even know which one's which. I'm like, is this the right piece? Um, so I did go over to the bandsaw once I separated them just to take off the last tiny little bit. I think that the bandsaw that was previously sitting on my little carousel of tools has a
Hmm.
metal cutting blade. I have cut steel with that before, but I don't have a metal cutting blade on the big bandsaw that I got from my dad. But that thing has no problem cutting aluminum, so I haven't replaced the blade on it. But yeah, there was so little extra material that on my disc sander, I think that's a 80 grit paper that I have on there. So that eats it up really quickly. So that wasn't a problem. And then the next thing that I've wondered about, because people kind of make a big deal about it when they come to it, is um, the best way to prime the inside of that tube, which really I
Oh,
don't think was a big deal.
yeah.
I've seen some clever things like people like drawing string in a cotton ball through it and whatever. But I think I'd just be as likely to just leave out the primer when doing that. So that turned out to be a non-event.
Yeah, I just sprayed a bunch of it in there and swirled it around until I saw it running out the bottom.
Yeah, and I didn't spray in there. I took a plastic cup and I went outside and I sprayed a bunch of to get it.
Yeah.
It probably would have been better to just spray it inside, less messy. I think my hands were a total mess from.
If I have to do any of those again, I think what I'm actually going to do is just, and I have some, is take some Corrosion X and just spray a whole bunch of that in there until it's all everywhere, and then seal up the ends, and it'll probably be fine.
Right. So the long push tube, the one that comes along the length of the wing. That one is that's just
It's aluminum. I think it's an aluminum tube.
yeah, but it's not powder coated. It's just
No, I think it's just raw aluminum.
yeah, yeah. So I have to be exercise a little bit more care there. But I did want to talk about the fact that um, did you tell me that when you set the rivets because you have to press that threaded rod end into the tube, which obviously be a little bit of a challenge first off
Super tight
because
fit.
yeah, super tight fit. But then you have to drill it and rivet it with those and 470-12. That is a long,
It was a very
long
long
rivet.
rivet.
And then didn't you tell me that it was too long? Like you the
Yeah, when I did the first two, three, and I bent them over because it's really hard to squeeze a rivet on that. You wouldn't think that it being round would matter because the rivet sets in the squeezer the same way. I promise you, it's different, and it will try and roll over. In the end, I had to set it. Um, what did I set it on? I set it on something almost like I was back riveting. Oh, that's what I did. I set the tail on the back riveting plate, and I used my rivet gun and held it and drove it down. And that's the only way I could get it to keep from bending them over. But I found I think it was the 10 or 11s, whatever the next size down was we had, actually fitted a lot better. So
so I
just
think
bumps.
yeah, and that's the next thing. So I didn't do any actual airplane building today, but what I did today was spend the day welding, um, which I've never done before, by the way.
Okay.
But you know that I'm welding curious. We've talked about this before, and I told myself that for my wrap present to myself, finishing up Lioness, that I was going to pick up a welder, and so as it turns out, I did pick up a multi-process welder, and that is one of many wrap presents that I bought for myself after that show. So I've
Nice.
got a new semi-auto shotgun, and I don't know. I couldn't decide what was actually my wrap present, so I just kept buying more.
There
So,
you go.
which is
So how's the welding going?
um, not bad to be honest. So here's what I did. I bought a multi-process welder. I didn't skimp, so to speak. I just decided it's not something. It's it was something that I was interested in getting into, but something that I knew that I have uses for that I want to do more with. So, for example, those two motorcycles that I inherited, the Sportster, I'm going to chop it, and so I need to be pretty good at welding if I want that thing to
So what
stay in one.
processes will it do?
What's that?
What processes will it do?
So it'll do MIG, solid and flux core, TIG, stick. So four.
Okay.
Yeah,
Nice.
four processes. So I've
TIG is my favorite. TIG is my favorite.
so here's the deal with that. I don't have gas for TIG yet. Um, Part of the things that I wanted to do with this welding thing, like in the beginning, just as the process of learning and setting up the shop for it, was to build a welding cart, build a welding table, kind of thing. But so I, by the way, I picked the welder on a smoking sale, like right around Christmas, like
Nice.
$400 off. Like it was,
That is a good deal.
yeah, like it was one of those like be there when the doors open kind of thing. It was the Harbor Freight's 12 Days of Christmas thing.
You really should be sponsored by Harbor Freight.
I should, I should.
If any of you are listening amongst all of our listeners and you represent Harbor Freight.
I've got this completely backwards because I, in fact, am a sponsor of Harbor Freight.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that one.
Yeah. So what I did was, I picked it up. I picked up some flux core wire, some solid MIG wire, um, some welding sticks, blah blah blah, whatever. I went and got a tank of whatever you call it, 75, 25, whatever.
Yeah,
For MIG,
that'll do nice on those rods.
yeah. But I realized I went and kind of set up a little table in the tank, and the tank really needs to be secured. You can't risk that thing falling over and
No, that's a missile.
turn, turning into a rocket. So I was like, you know what? I went back and I went ahead and picked up an inexpensive welding cart from there for like 80, $90 or something like that. Um, that would enable me to move this stuff around and with no worries of, but there's only space for one tank on there. So I went ahead and went to Conroe Welding Supply and got a tank of whatever. And I figured MIG is further down the line, or TIG rather, is further down the line for me in terms of learning. And so the idea is get good enough that I can do some basic stuff with MIG and then build a bigger welding cart that can hold two tanks. The first thing that I did when I got it was just to experiment with it, was to go ahead and do flux core, which is messy as hell.
Yep, lots of spatter.
Yeah, but if I'm going to be throw it in the truck and go out and work something out remotely or something like that, then it's good to have.
Yep.
So I did that, and then I hadn't really touched it in the past couple of weeks. Just been doing other stuff, and so then today I swapped the spool out, put the solid in there, made sure that I switched the leads, correctly. Turned on the gas and tried the regular solid wire MIG. Um, Pretty good. I mean, I
Lays down much nicer, doesn't it?
it does, yeah. And there were a few things that I needed to learn or dial in, which is like my welding mask, so that I can see what I'm looking at, like finding the right the right level of darkening, so that I can not only see the puddle but actually see the path that I'm trying to weld. So I had it too dark, and so then I'm just wandering all over the place or whatever.
I've done that one before.
Yeah,
I lay down what I think is a nice bead and I turn it off and I've gone like completely off the rails. Like, hmm,
yeah. So my goal for today was um, just to lay down some beads on, not even welding two pieces of metal together, just have a steel plate there and start laying down some beads to see if I can get the mask, the auto darkening on the mask dialed in. And I got better. There was still more dialing in later. Um, did that. Then I went ahead. I had gone to metal. I forget the name of the place, but I went to a metal shop and just bought like $8 worth of like drops, like offcuts, so random stuff that I can practice with. So I went ahead and took one of those plates and cut a section off it, and then tried to rejoin it, turn it back into a plate, and then kind of just followed the instructions. Try to weld, something back together, and then when you do, take it over and clamp it to a table, and then beat the crap out of it with a dead blow. And if it bends, good. If it breaks, then your weld wasn't good.
try
So, and it
again.
was sort of half and half. So I did it, I chamfered both sides of it. So I would weld both sides, tacked it, welded one side, and it was kind of like, oh, like I'm getting things dialed in, did the other side. And so when I went, it bent, it did, the weld did bend, but it was clear that it bent, and there were parts of it that broke. So then I ground it all out, went back, did it again in the current 90-degree position that was in, welded it again, and then straightened it back out, pounded the crap out of it, flattened it with a 4-pound sledge, and it all held together. It's still not perfect, but it is a single piece of metal again. So the next thing that I wanted to do was to make something practical, which was just a little hanger for my MIG gun. So I had picked up one of my recent trips, was like a $5 95-pound magnet from Harbor Freight, and then I took one of those pieces of steel and made a little thing, cut it out. Oh, wait a minute, since we're talking about it, I'll share my screen.
That's right. You have that ability.
I forgot that I can do that. Let's see if you can tell. I know there's so much clutter in here, but if you look, you see the MIG
Ah,
gun,
yeah.
and then you see the little bracket that I had time to paint.
Fancy.
Yeah. So it worked. it actually worked. I made something that's actually usable, and I'm pretty happy about that. So um, now the reason that there's a little bit of urgency because I'm not working on that motorcycle right now. I'm not about to cut that frame in half, but we're going back to the torque tubes. We can we can. Is that my Alexa? I think
It's got to be.
Alexa.
Mine's not here.
Alexa, I'm busy right now. Please don't interrupt. Uh, Yeah. So you have an option to either rivet those um, those rod ends in, or you can weld them. I decided I wanted to weld it. So um, again, plenty of delays, so much to do. I don't have to weld them this week or next week or even next month. So I figured why not just start practicing and developing a little bit of skill to the point where I feel like I could confidently weld it in place. So I did definitely fuse pieces of metal today successfully and was able to grind down the welds and still everything held together. But
That's the one thing learning to weld will make you really good at. Learning how to use a grinder.
yeah, learning how to use a grinder.
You'll get really good with that.
Yeah, if you looked at that picture, um, I took a piece of inch and a half, is it inch and a half, maybe 2 inch bar stock, and
Hmm.
then I made a notch in it, like a nice semicircle notch to drop that MIG gun down in there, which meant that I had to get really good with the grinder and the flap wheel and the cutting. So like kind of using a washer to trace out the shape that I wanted to cut, and then just making a whole bunch of cuts in there to get it out, and it worked. It worked out pretty well. So I'm happy. It the welding thing was like completely foreign territory. Like I understand academically how it all works, but the practical sense of it, like, can you do it? So now I know that I can make pieces of metal stick together. So now I'm just going to practice getting better at making pieces of metal stick together.
There you go. Now your next plane can be a Bearhawk, and you can weld up your own fuselage.
Well, I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about what else can I weld together. Oh, speaking of making things, uh, my my 3D printer showed up this afternoon.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, yeah. So my next airplane is going to be made completely out of 3D printed parts and welded. And
Perfect.
so you won't hear me complaining about tipping the head of a rivet over on the next one. I'll make a whole other batch of mistakes.
Whole new set of mistakes to make.
Yeah, yeah. But I do have some ideas for things that I'll make right away with the printer, just for the shop hangers and stuff like that. Because I'm tripping all over myself with the way that I am disorganized with everything. So, anyways, that's enough about all of that stuff.
I got a whole bunch of files I can share with you too.
Yeah, yeah. So that was fun. I'm stoked to have the experience with that. And then, by the way, when you're in town and you ever do need the use of a welding machine that does have gas, come on over. You're welcome to it.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. Mm.
I did a lot with that little solid wire one.
Yeah, you did. I mean, those wing stands are beefy. I've got two of them sitting in my garage right now.
Yeah, they're gonna break before they bend or break a weld.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so a couple weeks ago, maybe longer, I got a random text message from somebody that I didn't know, and this guy's like, "Hey, I'm so and so. I watch your channel, and apparently, like, I don't know, at some point, I did like an unboxing, and my phone number was on the label or something like that."
Oh, I remember somebody commenting on you. It should cover up your stuff. Yeah.
And I think that I commented like, "I don't care," you know. So he said, "You said you don't care, so." Hey, I come. He lives in Daytona. He lives at Spruce. I think it's called Spruce Creek, like the
Hmm.
biggest air park, like community. He said there are like 1,600 homes there. This
Oh
place
wow.
is epic, and so I was going to look it up because then I thought, well, it kind of sounds familiar, but I don't know much about that stuff. But I think that that might be the air park where you've seen this. What does he call it? Like a poor man's Hellcat, the guy who did an RV8 with a radial engine. Have you seen this?
Oh yeah, yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, I think that's the same air park. But anyways, this guy said, "Hey, would you mind?" Because he comes to Houston frequently. Would you mind if I come check out the shop? I'm building an RV8, or I'm about to. Wasn't I wasn't really clear. Like I'm about to. I said, "Sure." So he showed up yesterday, and that was cool. That was a fun visit. His name is Mark. He's a retired freight dog. He used to fly 7.6s for Airborne Express,
Okay.
and he started his build back in, I want to say, like 2008. He got his empennage kit, and then he went up to, back then, I think sort of like a sport air kind of thing. He went up to this some place south of Atlanta where you spend a week there, and you're supposed to leave with a completed empennage. And he got very close. He got everything done except for the vertical stabilizer, and then he hasn't built since. And one of the things that was interesting, because he said, "I want to check out your shop. I want to ask some questions because I'm going to start building again." And so he has purchased. He has in his possession the wing kit and the fuselage kit as well,
Oh,
and
nice.
then his mostly complete. But one of the things he said was what held him up was he was kind of like, in We Can Do This, he was kind of hand wringing about what he was supposed to do about priming, and
The never-ending debate.
the never ending debate. And it's one of those things, like I do this all the time. Like you think about something so much, and pretty soon it's been months, and you're like, you've moved on and you've done other things or whatever. He got busy, but now he has time, so he's starting to build again. I think that he said he's going to go out of sequence, which doesn't really matter. I think he's going to do fuselage before he does the wings, so he's already started the first part of the fuselage
Nice.
business, and I've seen other guys do that as well. But I'm super excited for him. He's got two hangars out there, I guess, and he's got a helicopter in one, like a Schweitzer, which I think is super cool.
That is super cool.
Yeah, and then he's got a 310 in the other.
Also cool.
Yeah. So, anyways, that was fun. So that took up a portion of my day in the shop yesterday, which is just fine because I wasn't going to get much done other than what I did manage to finish anyways, was get started on those torque tubes, because once I did the priming on the inside, I had to let that stuff set up and cure before I did anything else with it. So that ended up being um, a nice little change of pace. Shop visits are fun
Yep.
when they happen, and yeah, I'm always excited to meet other people who are um, trying to build their own airplane. Man, it's a funky challenge to take on. The audacity to think that you can make that thing.
Ah, it's easy. Just follow the directions.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's a um, when I was inspired to actually take action and order my empennage kit, I had gone to, I was working up in Pittsburgh, and I found out about this EAA chapter that was nearby, that they were having like a barbecue on Saturday. So I went and dropped in and talked to some guys there. And that was the first time I'd ever been to an EAA anything. And one of the guys is like flipping hamburgers, and he's talking, he's building his second or his third airplane. He's like, it's adult Legos, these days. And I'm like, oh, okay. I don't think it's adult Legos though.
No.
My experience is that it's a little bit more challenging than Legos, and the stakes are a bit higher. So that does oversimplify it.
Did you see the EAA webinar this week with Vans?
No, man, and I signed up for a lot of them. I did probably for the third time, like the basic wiring, and I did like four of them, but I didn't do the Vans one. And from what I understand, it was actually pretty good.
It was pretty good, yeah. They did a good job of explaining the difference in the instructions as the models progressed. Like they talk about, you had to fabricate everything for the 4 and the 6. And then when you got to the 7 and the 8, it was all match hold, but you still had to fabricate a lot of things. And then when you get to the 14, there's no fabricating anything or final sizing anything, which sounds so much easier.
So much easier, and I feel lucky that ours is as easy as it is.
Oh
But
yeah.
going back to the spare spar thing and the laser cut parts thing, I think that for people like you and I who have kits that are not final size drilled or final size punched or whatever, um, that wasn't it wasn't it was a big deal in that it created havoc and created long delays in our building. But the reality is, for most of us who had laser cut parts, if it was a kit like the 8 that you had to final size drill, the problem disappeared when you find.
Yeah, you could drill it out.
Right. But the guys who were doing RV14s, they were just screwed, man. There was,
Yeah, what you got is what you got.
yeah. So I understand that, why that was something that they needed uh, to address. But
Oh, speaking of our viewers and whatnot,
yeah,
I watched a video the other day that referenced one of my videos.
what video was
Slink
that?
Air.
'Cause that's,
He's
that's
doing
right.
his fuel tank. He's like, don't do what he did on the right one, but the left ones are a good video to watch.
Because I saw that, and he said, "Yeah, I'm watching this guy who did some what you just talked about there," and I'm like, I think that he's referring to Tim, and I think that when I talked to you about him, I think when I was in your shop and we are doing the bottom skins, you weren't sure if you had watched any of his stuff yet, and I said he does these dad jokes, he throws them into
Yep.
every yeah
I saw his video previous to that, and he was talking about some stuff. So I threw a comment in there, like, because he had talked about watching Scott's video from Vans, and I threw the comment in there, like, I followed that to the T on the first one, and I had leaks in the baffle. So I changed things up.
yeah. I watched Scott's video so many times.
Yeah, I did too.
Yeah, I actually kind of like it. I mean, for whatever reason, it's kind of enjoyable to me to watch.
Oh yeah, I put it on in the background for background noise a whole bunch of times, even when I wasn't working on the tank.
Yeah, but the guy, I don't remember what his name is, but the Slink Air guy, his dad jokes. By the, I I don't like puns. I don't like dad jokes. But when he does his dad jokes, what I like about it, and I hate dad jokes, but what I like about it is he gets such a laugh out of it that I actually kind of enjoy that part of it. Like, and I think he might hate him too because he usually laughs his ass off and then comments on what a terrible joke it is.
Yeah, to me, it reminds me of that scene in Pulp Fiction where they talk about the one joke she's supposed to tell every episode, and it was a terrible joke. Catch up. Yeah.
Okay, this is completely off topic, but you
Yep.
mentioned Pulp Fiction, and every now and then on YouTube, I'll go down this rabbit hole where I watch reaction videos, usually to songs I like. Like I watch people react to, like, Skid Row, 18 in Life, or something like that. But a reaction video popped up for Pulp Fiction, like people reacting to the scene with the big Kahuna burger and everything. That whole
Is that
it's
tasty
pretty
burger?
good. There's that, and then I started watching reaction videos, people reacting to the movie that recruiters used to make us watch, which is Full Metal
Full
Jacket.
Metal Jacket. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
That and Major Pain.
yeah. Major pain. Well, I'm not kidding. When I joined the Marines, if they if they thought that you were serious, they took you in the back room and they popped in. This is
Oh, this is what you're signing up for?
Yeah, I joined in 1990. That movie came out in 1987. But yeah, you come back and you'd watch the whole boot camp scene, and if you still wanted to join after that, you were in, and that's how they got a lot of us. So Staff Sergeant Robustolini got me to watch. I had already watched it a bunch of times, but I
That's
was
funny.
like, "Yeah, man." Okay, a little update because we're coming up on the 1 hour mark here.
Yes, we are.
Um, our podcast I'd say, is doing pretty well. It's interesting now that we did the video podcast. There's less traction on Spotify, I think, because some of those people are doing one of two things: watching the video, because a handful of people have watched the video, not just you and me. Um, or I don't check Apple Podcasts as often because it's a little bit more wonky to look at the analytics. But there's a lot more listenership on Apple Podcasts than there is on Spotify. So it actually, um, we're still only in 5 countries. Um, you know, I'm hoping to get a sixth here soon. And interestingly, our guy in South Africa sent me a message, and he said the guy I told you he ordered his RV8 kit. He
Yep.
said that he just met with his with A&P that he's going to be checking it in with to do inspections throughout his build. And he's like, "Do you guys have to do that?" And I'm like, "Nope. This is America. We
Yeah.
don't need permission for nothing except for the final airworthiness certificate." But I think that when we come back next week, we should talk a little bit more about what that process is like as we go through. We talked about 51% and build log, but let's talk about it in a little bit more
Okay. Yeah, that
detail
sounds like a good one.
for our several listeners around the world. Um, yeah, I think that we should wrap this one up here so that we can get it out to our adoring fans. Tim, thanks for making time, and I hope your stomach feels better after being all weird.
Already hungry now.
Okay. All right. Well, see you on the next one.
See you on the next one.